Hey, Internet! We are back with
Hi, Internet.
more Kerbal Space Program. We're going
Ooh.
our usual theme to start with a launch today. As I said last time, we did a whole lot of science to. You notice also on this rocket, I actually have fairing on the top now, which is the big bulbous thing. That is, it's aerodynamically sound, and yes, it looks like a penis. But yeah, so in the last thing we did a bunch of robotic missions to the moon, so that we could get enough science to finally have solar panels, which will allow us to finally have enough power to maintain life support to get our guy Frank Kerman, who's really freaked out right now. But to get him out of Kerbin's orbit and to do a flyby mission of the moon. So that is what we are doing right now.
Awesome. We also saved our friend last video.
Oh yeah. We went and saved Jeb from the North Pole.
From the icy depths.
It was Donard.
Or the icy tops, I guess.
Yeah, it was Donard Kerman who did that, I believe.
Donard? I haven't actually been reading the names.
Yeah, they all have like really bizarre names. Well, except for like some of them are also named like Frank, but there's like Donard and Gregzel.
It's a different place. We're on their.
There's actually a whole bunch of them that are named after Let's Players of the game as well. So there's Danny Kerman, there's Kurt Kerman, who's named after Kurt J. Mac. There is Manly Kerman, who's named after Scott Manley.
Do you think if our playthrough gets popular enough, there'd be a camp in Kerman?
Yeah, probably. If it gets that popular.
Can he have a plucky and possibly slightly educationally challenged sidekick named Carney Kerman?
I mean, honestly, I could just go and add those guys to the astronaut names.
Gee whiz, Matt! What are we looking at today?
Well, today we're taking our space rocket out past the orbit of Kerbin and to our fine moon, watching an orbital sunrise.
Gee, Matt, isn't that gonna take a long time?
Not at all. It'll take a little bit of time, but nothing compared to the things that our Apollo boys went through. You see, the entire Kerbin system is 1/10 the size. So, where the Apollo missions took 3.5 days to get out to the moon, this should only take about 12 hours.
Oh wow! Better pack a lunch. Quality.
And invertible fairing. Yeah, look at that. And now there's a rocket.
Oh, look at it. Look at it drift beautifully out in space.
Look at my beautiful, not at all shaky ass camera work.
So here's a question, Matt.
Yes.
If the technology to do stuff like this exists in our world today,
to go to the moon and stuff.
Well, yeah. Why don't we check out what's at the bottom of the ocean?
We actually have. Fun fact that I learned a couple of days ago. There have been the deepest part of the ocean is Challenger Deep, or it's the deepest that any person has ever been. And while there have been a dozen or so people, more than a dozen people on the moon, there have only been 3 people into Challenger Deep.
Wasn't one of them James Cameron?
I don't think so.
Didn't James Cameron, do that?
Also, I added this Kerbal alarm clock mod so that I stop, because I may or may not have done a mission where I flew past the moon and got really mad because the game went way too fast.
I thought you were gonna say I got this alarm clock mod to tell me when to stop playing.
No.
It's like the Civ 5 mod. There's no way to tell time when you're playing Civ 5. Just know that it goes away really fast.
Oh yeah, Canadian film director James Cameron made a solo manned descent in the Deep Sea Challenger to the bottom of Challenger Deep.
Yep,
So you are correct. James Cameron has lived quite an adventurous life.
he has.
You know, talking about James Cameron and aliens and stuff like that. Do you know that there are otherkin who believe themselves to be the aliens from Avatar in another
Na'vi?
Yeah, the Na'vi. They are, they have the Phantom Na'vi being, and they believe that not only is their planet real, but that James Cameron foresaw it and made a movie about it, and he will one day awaken as a Navikin. So I'm about to start doing some science here, and I realize I was right near the moon. Suddenly it says I'm in space over Kerbin, and then my dude flies off like at 100. He takes like 100 Gs, and it says he died of G-force damage. And I realized,
Oh no!
well, he didn't, but and I realized that's because I had him outside the ship, and then I changed sphere of influence, and now he can't get back in the ship because the camera's fucked up, and this is how.
No!
Well, I had to change.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Well, I finally managed to get him back in the ship by adjusting my camera angle. So one of the things about piloting the Kerbins is that they, unlike the ship, which you can pilot from anywhere and the nav ball just works from any point, the Kerbins or the Kerbals will actually. Man, I really like to spin around the ship here. But the Kerbals will always pilot in a chase cam mode, meaning whatever direction you have the camera facing is the direction that they'll go when you hit WAS and D. And when they're in EVA mode, you also hit Shift and Control to make their jetpacks go up and down.
Got it.
So you have to adjust the camera if you want them to orient in a different direction. So we're going to take this thing way, way low in a moon orbit. Oh yeah, and here's me. I put some extra little solid rocket motors on this stage so that I didn't have some debris orbiting the moon. So that will decelerate that stage. And
later,
it should decelerate it enough here, if you look at the orbit, that it'll just crash into the far side of the moon.
I see. Yes, I see that circle.
That gray circle, not like the blue circles.
Nope. So I noticed you've got all these numbers on the right side of the screen.
Yeah, that's
here.
the Kerbal Flight Engineer, which which gives me helpful things like it tells me my apoapse and my periapse, how much time I have, and more importantly, you notice in the vessel display near the bottom right, it tells me how much fuel I have left.
Oh, that does seem very helpful.
And fuel in this and in most rocket operations is measured in what's called delta V, which is change in velocity. Which is just you have this much, because there's an issue with like trying to measure it in like gallons or something like that, because you can do that and it's an accurate measurement. But one of the things about a rocket is that as you burn off fuel, your fuel is so heavy that as you burn it off, your rocket gets lighter, and so you have to kind of you do some calculus on that to kind of figure out how much your rocket will accelerate as its mass keeps changing and stuff like that. So that calculation is referred to as delta V, which is how much your rocket can ever change its current velocity.
Calculus.
Yeah, no, Newtonian physics. And we're getting down real close here, like 30 kilometers, which is, I believe, since the last time when I crashed that satellite into the moon, I did some reading and found out that the highest mountain on the moon is about 10 kilometers, and you can see me passing over one of the space probes we landed. Because whenever you get within 100 kilometers or something, it'll pop up your it will pop up a little waypoint marker. And now I have my dude sitting outside looking at the moon saying, yep, that's a moon. Taking some pictures.
Sure is big.
And so I keep trying to, there's a whole bunch of different places on the moon to do observations. And I keep going above the highlands and the midlands because I'm going in an equatorial orbit around the moon and not a... If I did a polar orbit, I could also obviously get the poles.
here's the question: how many Kerbals are there?
That is a good question. I think there's infinite. I don't know how many unique names are in the game though.
Okay.
But presently in this, I actually do have a finite supply of Kerbals, I suppose, because of the life support mod I have makes all death permanent. As it stands in the game as it is, once all your Kerbals die, it'll just refresh the name pool and create a whole bunch of new guys with the same names. So here's where I run into a problem getting back, because you notice whenever I pop up the resources thing, I don't have a whole lot of fuel left, and I just made a really, really big orbit when I break out from the moon there.
Yeah.
Which is going to take me more fuel than I have to decelerate. If you notice at some point I switch up the vessel thing, it's going to take me 354.2 meters per second to decelerate, and I only have 263 meters per second of fuel left.
Oof. So
we're in a little bit of a pickle right now.
Yeah, what? Are you just gonna die?
So I'm like, okay, maybe that's not a smart solution. So let's think here. We are still in orbit. We still have a bunch of fuel left, 255 meters per second, and I maximize a principle in orbital mechanics that is known as the Oberth effect, which is used for things like gravitational slingshots. And also, I'm making use of the moon's orbit and firing counter to that to try and slow myself down. Because if I launch off the moon from different areas, it'll either make me go faster or slower. And the closer I am to the moon when I fire my engines, the more of a gravitational assist I get from firing the engines from a principle known as the Oberth effect. The formula of which I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's the long and short of it. Is the closer you are to a gravitational object, the more effective all of your maneuvers are.
So basically, what you're saying is we're gonna crash this bitch.
We gonna crash this bitch, yo.
Got it.
So also, this mission has now taken over a day, and we still haven't even begun our final descent burn. And you notice, I actually turn on the resources tab here. You notice my liquid fuel and oxidizer at the bottom there get real low. And I think had I actually needed to get my periapsis, you notice my periapsis only hits like 25 kilometers. But fortunately, Kerbin has an atmosphere, and so I can do a process known as aerobraking or aero capture, where you just hit the atmosphere and it will slow you down. And that is the only reason I was able to get back, because had I needed to actually stop, I would not have had enough fuel. So I blast my now dead rocket section away. And you can see some debris underneath me here from another launch. Which I guess eventually that'll come back down, because that's actually well within the atmosphere right now. And now we're going to begin our slow deceleration from 3 kilometers per second to 0.
Oh, you know what this calls for? This calls for... Pardon. Let me find a good one.
While you're looking up one, there's a fun little fact about the Apollo missions. Did you know that there's actually a slight angle and a little bit of aerodynamic curve on the bottom of all of the Apollo return capsules, so that they actually had a little bit of lift and you could steer them a little bit as they re-entered.
Oh, how did that work out?
I mean, astronauts use them. Also, you notice in the Ferrum thing, I'm currently going Mach 5, which is fast. I was going about Mach 8 when I re-entered the atmosphere. And I've been fortunate enough that I did not. So far, I haven't actually burned up any of my vehicles this single heat shield on the bottom of my ship has been doing all right, and the placement of all my instruments is such that the superheated plasma isn't burning them off. And now we are past any hypersonic points, and there's no impact heating at this point, so I should be deploying the parachute pretty soon here.
Here's one. If a meteorite hits a planet, what do we call the ones that don't hit the planet?
What do we call them?
Meteorongs.
In that vein, I recently learned the difference between a meteor and an asteroid.
Oh, size? Is it size?
No, it's actually apparently an asteroid. From what I have read, if an asteroid is a planetoid that will never hit the Earth, that is never supposed to come in an intersect path with the Earth. A meteorite. Oh yeah, and here's me looking out the window again at the clouds. But a meteorite or a meteor will eventually is an asteroid that is on an intersect course with the Earth.
So, asteroids are meteorongs.
It's true, and that's one of the things. Like when you hear about the Kerbal asteroid, it's referred to interchangeably as an asteroid or a meteor.
Because are they just not sure?
Well, I mean, it's just there's the same thing. Also, I picked up a shitload of science from that mission.
Look at all that science.
So much science, because I recovered a vessel from around the moon. So now, let's see. I think we go to the tracking station, because between this and the other one, Kerbal Space Program updated and added NASA's asteroid redirect mission. So now we're going to take a look at all these asteroids, and look at this. Look at all this shit out in the orbit just past Kerbin. Look at it.
I'm seeing it. I see all the circles.
And you notice that some of them, as I slowed down here, some of them are actually on intersect courses, which I guess makes them meteors.
Are they going to eventually ever hit each other?
They're not going to hit each other, I don't think. At least I haven't seen any that will. But there are some that will hit our planet.
Oh, okay.
Which is problematic.
You have to invent a laser.
Well, actually, in the
go kill them before they kill you.
Yeah, the NASA asteroid redirect mission actually adds some things like super heavy launch vehicles. There's one here that's going to hit our atmosphere and maybe bounce off. It's hitting about 43 kilometers up, which is not enough to really aero capture it. And you notice that asteroids just kind of keep showing up about every 5 minutes. Because this is crazy. Like, I think at this point, there's 20 in this as of this recording going around the planet. At the point I am in the game right now, there's about 55, and they just keep showing up. So anyway, in the NASA asteroid redirect mission pack adds things like super heavy launch vehicles, and it also adds like claws and things that you can use to grab onto asteroids. So we're gonna play around with some of those right now. I don't have any of the claws or anything, but I did get some of the super heavy launch stuff. So we're gonna play around with this. I'm gonna start setting up a communications network around the planet.
What's the most basic rocket I suppose you can make? Like how many pieces will get to space?
Honestly, like 2 at this point. It all depends on what kind of parts you're using and how you have it set up. So you see here, this is like a 9-part rocket using this huge solid rocket booster that's basically like... so actually this setup I'm using right here is actually if you ever look at the Ares 1 launcher, so there's a kind of a problem here.
Yeah, this doesn't seem like it's gonna be very...
Well, you notice how the rocket's overheating a lot?
Yeah.
And I check it, and it's getting up to like 2,000 degrees, and whoops.
Oh.
So it turns out that when I updated this, I forgot to update deadly reentry, and so all of the values of temperatures of things are wrong.
And there it goes.
So I I do have the secondary rocket motor on this, which I use to touch us back down at the launch pad.
Oh, so it doesn't actually explode in a fiery.
Yes,
death.
so we can reuse our communication satellite.
Oh, good.
So with a few tweaks to deadly reentry, we now have this solid rocket booster. And you might have noticed at some point in there, maybe not, I used the tweakable setting, or one of the tweakables from version 0.22 to turn down the rocket's thrust a lot, because this should be firing with about twice as much force as it is. So if you look at the Constellation program was NASA's plan to replace the space shuttle at some point. And you notice now this motor hasn't even burned out, and our apoapsis is already 70 kilometers, 90 kilometers. We're already well into space on just this motor alone.
Doing good.
But yeah, so NASA had a plan called the Constellation program, which part of it was to repurpose a whole bunch of the space shuttle ideas up to 200 kilometers now. And that was things like the space shuttle solid rocket boosters, the space shuttle external tank, up to 300 kilometers now. Still on the first stage, which finally just burned out. And so they had in there were the Ares rockets, which the whole Constellation program was supposed to be about going to the moon and eventually going to Mars. And so if you look at the Ares 1 launch vehicle, it's basically this thing right here. It's a single huge space shuttle solid rocket booster with a secondary orbital injection stage and a fairing. And that was one of the few the few Constellation vehicles that was actually managed to. There was a prototype built and it was test fired, and there is a photo of the Ares 1 actually being launched. And then in 2010, Congress canceled funding to the Constellation program, and NASA had to think of something new. We still ended up...
NASA's... Go ahead.
So we still ended up using a whole bunch of the things from the Constellation program, like the Ares space capsule. That's still the thing that NASA's working... Or not the Ares, the Orion space capsule is something that NASA's still working on.
NASA's kind of in trouble right now, aren't they?
They're always in trouble.
Well, okay.
They're in trouble. They're in more trouble than they were right now because of the whole thing with Ukraine and Russia, and the United States and NASA are not, or the United States and Russia are not great friends, and that extends to NASA and Roscosmos. Are cutting off some communication. Nobody in the organization seems to be too worried about that, so I'm not going to be too worried about that right now. I'm not going to panic until someone tells me to.
Panic now, Matt!
All right, so like I said, I'm going to try and set up a communication satellite. So I'm going to put this into a geostationary orbit around Kerbin. And I forget here about what it's supposed to be. I believe the apoapsis height is supposed to be like 2,868 kilometers, and I misread it, and because the semi-major axis is supposed to be 3,468 kilometers, something like that. I misread it as the apoapsis and the periapsis are supposed to be that high. So I end up taking this thing a bit further out than it's supposed to be. I deploy an antenna because, again, this is a communication satellite.
I mean, will it still function even though it's farther off? Or?
So it won't do the geostationary thing, because the whole thing is that the whole purpose of a geostationary orbit is you want something with an orbital period of 1 day on the planet. For the planet Kerbin, that's a 6-hour period. And so here I am out at 2,868 kilometers, and you can see I'm not really moving past the planet at any significant speed. It's pretty much rotating with me. So anyway, now that we've shown that we can get an object into geostationary orbit, let's add some stabilization fins, because that thing was hella unstable.
Yeah.
And we're going to add some parachutes so we can actually crash this down in the ocean and reuse it. And we're going to add some scientific instruments, and we're going to send this bitch to the moon.
Let's do it!
And also I'm adding some
some
girders here so I can fit these goo capsules inside of our fairings. Because the goo capsules as they stand are like way too huge. they stick out too far on the sides. And I believe, I had a camera, and we gonna land this bitch, I guess. It's funny, apparently I edited this so long ago, and I'm having a hard time making the landing legs fit inside the stupid fairing. So I just built the fairing around it, and I smashed the landing legs in there.
Get like in a high school locker.
Get in there. And then I need to add a little bit extra because I'm gonna try and land this thing. So we need a couple extra solid rocket boosters to give us just that little extra boost off the launch pad. And I need to fix my staging because everything got mad fucked, yo. So yeah, here's our really weird looking rocket. It only looks weird because of those 2 extra boosters, which will be gone pretty soon.
It does look a little silly. It doesn't look like it should be as stable as it is.
Well, I do have those fins on there. And
that doesn't look like it should mean anything, though.
I mean, it's going fast enough that it's biting into the air pretty hard. And you notice I'm able to turn it over to the horizon while I'm still in the atmosphere right now.
It essentially just looks like you shot a pencil upward.
I believe it was James that did James ever tell you that story of questions asked to the developers of this game? That they did a Q&A session one time where they accepted any question, and one question posed to them was, will we ever be able to build a spaceship that doesn't look like a bunch of sticks? And they said, we're still working on that. That was in one of the much earlier versions of the game, and if you see the early versions of the game, they only had the launch parts that were this size. Now in the game, they have much bigger parts that you can use. And also, they made everything a lot more cartoony looking, and a little less industrial. And we go around this planet.
Go.
Go,
little freedom
Oh yeah, I have to
fighter.
wait for it. So one of the things, I actually kind of missed this a little bit and kind of fuck it up. And I'm like, oh shit. So one of the things I always try and wait for, you notice it has that thing there that says estimated burn time?
Yes.
So one of the things is that if you do that, that's like, it's like if you manage to fire the rocket all at once in a single shot, that's how much you'd have to do. So in order to plan for that, you want to cut that time in half and start halfway before you would end up reaching your maneuver point. So that way, if you're firing at full power, you fire half before and half after, and that balances it out to about what it should be. And right now I'm trying to fix this because I realized I landed a whole bunch of stuff on the equator, so I want to try and put this thing into a polar orbit, and I don't quite have enough fuel to do that.
Aww.
So we'll just do this weird slant orbit.
Yeah, this is looking kind of weird, but whatever.
Yeah, you know what? We'll do it because that's how we roll. Fast and out of control.
No one ever said science had to be pretty.
No, they didn't. Science can be a dirty girl.
Matt?
She can be a harsh mistress.
Alright.
And anyway, we're just going to try and take this thing down. I tried to set up a polar orbit again. If you want to do an inclination change...
This is why you need lasers.
That actually is a thing. There's a...
I like that I make like little jokes.
You make jokes
like,
and you make jokes, and then they're all like, a lot of them are kind of true. So one thing
that's awesome.
I was talking about,
space is awesome.
It is, and more people need to know that, so that if we keep getting funding to programs that go to it.
Everybody, space is awesome.
Go to the Planetary Society and help them get NASA money.
Yes. Go to your local space today.
Why, I was just in a space a few hours ago. Also, yeah, you see, it's good I didn't try to do this polar orbit because I'm just about out of fuel trying to land this thing.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, so you mentioned the thing about lasers. They're actually one of the plans we had for redirecting asteroids originally was a thing called laser bees, and that's the actual name given. So one of the things about lasers is that if you hit something with a laser, that superheats it, and that causes it to boil off. And when it boils off, that's called bloom. And so one of the plans that NASA had for redirecting a near-Earth asteroid was to put all these little tiny laser beams in orbit, and they would shoot at an asteroid, and the bloom that came off of it would basically be like propulsion, like from a rocket. And the plan was to use the bloom from that to redirect the asteroid slowly. And for many reasons, we didn't use this.
You have like maybe about 10 seconds
We have about
to finish your thought.
I mean, that was the thought.
Okay.
We can talk about asteroids more next time.
Sure can. Join us, won't you?
Won't you join us? Won't you be my neighbor?
Don't need to be creepy now.